Lost and Found Behind the Book. Conversations all about the makings of Lost and Found, finding the power in your voice.
So welcome everybody. I got the live going. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Lost and Found Behind the Book, about the creative process behind my recent memoir, Lost and Found, Finding the Power in Your Voice. Oh, and I'm so grateful and so happy to have Nikki Starcat Shields joining me today. Nikki, I'm going to give an impromptu bio for you and you can fill in, right? So Nikki Starcat Shields is a book midwife. She's an author, she's a creator, she's an artist, art maker. She leads writing retreats and she leads regular weekly parallel play dates for creators of all types to tap into their creative voices and their creativity and to have accountability and community around art making. And I met Nikki because we both actually worked with the similar business coach many years ago. And during the pandemic, I joined one of her writing programs because she has various writing programs. I joined the Sacred Path. And I think I was a part of that for at least 2 years, I want to say, while I was writing my book. And I found it invaluable. So I felt like there was no way I could talk about the process of writing this book without talking to you, Nikki. And so thank you so much for coming today.
You're welcome. I'm so happy to be here. And I'm so proud and pleased with the book that you created. Oh my gosh, it's awesome. From the obviously the content, but also just like all the design and the art and everything's just so beautiful.
Thank you so much. So tell me, did I leave anything out? What else could I say in describing the work that you do?
No, I think you've got it. You may not know that I've also started. So I have 6 books now, nonfiction,
Wow.
out in the world. But I've started really paying attention and working more on my fiction, and I'm going to be probably launching that in 2025. So it's like contemporary fantasy. So that's something you might not have even known
Yes.
about, but it's
Yes.
coming.
Yes, I'm so excited about that. I love fantasy, actually. It's like one of my favorite fiction genres, particularly. So,
Cool.
yeah. Well, thank you again for being here. You know, you've watched me grow and move through the process of getting this book out, and I feel like, in the beginning, I definitely was just writing because it was pleasurable, and I was like, we were on lockdown and it was a really helpful way to kind of deal with all the various emotions that I feel like the globe was feeling, as we are feeling nowadays too. I feel like art is one of the ways that I find, and I recently saw a fellow singer, songwriter, composer post, and they shared that, art is where they find hope. And I feel like that's definitely something that I resonate with, that, whether it's through writing or composing music or live performance, and whether I'm doing it or I'm witnessing someone else, it's really when I do find hope. And I feel like as humans, I notice that we're really able to listen to one another more deeply. Sometimes it's hard to hear one another when we're just talking and we have all of our various opinions, but I feel like with art, I feel like we're able to listen on a deeper level. And there were very many meditations that you offered it's as a part of your process, which you can talk about. And I remember you doing a meditation around intuition.
Mhm.
And some of you who have my book, you may know the book is organized in 3 sections. It's your intuitive voice, the sound of your voice, and your artistic voice. And so, Nikki, I wonder for you, I know that you are it's a regular part of your artistic process to connect with your intuition. And I'm curious, how are you able to identify or distinguish your intuition or your intuitive voice? Is that something that, yeah.
Yeah. I love that. If anyone's familiar with the system of human design, it's kind of like astrology. I'm a reflector in that system, which is kind of a rare, odd thing, which I didn't know for many years. And when I learned that, it made a lot of sense about how I had to kind of build my life to cope with all this. Like reflectors feel all the things. It's like empaths,
Right.
all the things.
Right.
And so what I did was I've really closely entwined, not necessarily on purpose at first, my spirituality and my creativity.
Yeah.
And so I really made it a practice of listening for that inner voice really early because I needed to. It was just, otherwise it was just overwhelming. And I was very much a chameleon. Like I just go with whatever, like, read a book and then start writing like that, or, like just whatever. So to find my own essence, I really had to tune into that inner voice. And now I kind of am living like that. Like I'll just be like, okay, I want to do such and such thing. Okay, wait a minute. Listen, pause. And so the voice for me, the inner voice of intuition, is a combination of a feeling, like being drawn towards something or kind of repelled away from it. But also I will hear like the voice, in my head, like, no, that's not for you right now, or let's do something different. And it's so hard sometimes because sometimes you don't know why. Yeah. And sometimes you never find out why. Like, why am I not supposed to do this, thing?
Right.
They're not, it's not going to necessarily tell you, but I've found that by really focusing on following it, and like we're all human, obviously sometimes I like fall off the path like everybody does, but coming back onto it, coming back to alignment and following it, it makes things like so much easier and also so much more like prolific, like so many ideas, so many, creative moments and fun, joy. I know pleasure is like a big part of what you talk about. And yeah, I agree with that. If something pulls you forward and it feels pleasurable and good, follow it.
Right. Yeah. That's really, that's great. I love what you're saying about too, how like when you kind of get into a practice of listening to your inner voice, your intuition, how things go much more smoothly, how your day can go more smoothly, or like you're saying that a lot of sort of downloads, artistic downloads or information can come through so much more easily. That's
yeah, rather than fighting it and trying to control it so much, which we're kind of taught to do in our culture, right? Like we're just control everything and be in charge. And I think that's a little overrated.
Yeah. I know, and it's funny because you say that too. I feel like we've talked about this, but part of why writing the book for me was sort of so easy in a way is that I didn't have a goal at the beginning to really like that I knew what I was creating. It was just kind of like I was in the process of just like showing up, writing, and enjoying these different pieces that I thought sometimes, how is this all going to go together? And I don't know, it's like, okay, I'm writing a monologue. I'm writing a poem. Oh, here's an essay, but I wasn't like in the beginning, I want to write this book and it's going to be like this. And, a lot of times I do create things that way, but it was really liberating in a lot of ways to write this book without preconceived ideas about what the end product was going to be in a lot of ways,
And your willingness, and any artist's willingness to surrender to some extent, I think will make it easier. It's like going downstream. You're gonna like, no, I'm gonna stop paddling upstream. I'm just gonna like surrender and go with the flow. That makes it easier.
Yes, so much. So I want to ask you about these couple of sections because I've been asking, I asked Nikolai, my husband was the first guest, and we were talking about these different ideas of the voice and how they show up for you or, appear for you. What about the sound of your voice? Has that ever been something that you've thought about? Because as a writer, right, you're not necessarily always reading out loud. People are reading your words, but are there ways that you think about, the sound of your voice or how you use your voice in your day-to-day life?
Yeah, Yeah, a couple things come to mind. One, so my first career before I started this writing coach business was in radio. So I was in public radio. So I did some training, not with singing, but with like the spoken voice. And in hearing, I got really trained. Like I have friends who are like, oh, I hate the sound of my voice when I hear it like on a recording. I got trained out of that so early because I was doing the radio. And so I still use a lot of those tools and techniques. And one thing I love is when I'm in a room, a physical room of people, even though I've often been like, I was really shy as a kid and I was soft spoken for a long time, I can project my voice and people can hear me across the room. That's a powerful thing. Some people don't know how to do that, or their shyness keeps them from learning it or whatever. But that, I think, as a woman especially, being heard, physically heard, and speaking up it's like a really good skill to have. And so I'm thankful for my for my radio training for that. Another thing is, I'm not a professional singer, but I like to sing and chant and things like that.
Yes.
And my husband's actually a singer. It's one of the things that he does. He's kind of a jack of all trades, but he's a singer. And I remember going to something called Vermont Witch Camp way back in the day, and we did a lot of singing and chanting. And when it was a week long, and when I came back from that, I remember him saying, okay, look at the power of practice. Your voice right now, because I was singing some of the chants that we'd learned, your voice is so strong right now because you've been doing it like all week. So I'm like, oh yeah, okay. And so now I'm in a newly formed band that is a kirtan band.
Yeah.
So I'm drumming. I do hand drumming, so I'm drumming, but we're also all chanting. And so once again, I'm like, oh, now I've got to kind of train the voice. And what I noticed about my voice as a non-professional singer is that I can follow along. I can sing along with the radio and sound great, or sing along with somebody else and make it work. Right. But if I have to sing on my own, I'm like, oh, I don't know where this goes, or I'm, or if someone in the band is like singing off key, I hold back because I'm like, oh, I know that's not right. I don't want to go where that's going, but I don't know where the right thing is, So it's just like a dance of, okay, how does this work?
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought up the radio. That's so, I forgot about that you were in radio. And, it's so funny because I used to teach younger children, like from 6 years old and up. Now I really primarily work with young adults, like 18 years and older. But people used to ask me, oh, is it too young to, have your child start voice lessons at 8 years old, at 10 years old? And I'd say, no, if they're passionate, because a lot of times parents would say, my child loves to sing. She's singing around the house constantly. I don't know what to do. I feel like I should sign her up for voice lessons. And one of the things is, like, sometimes parents would feel this sort of rationale, is it rational? Should I really be investing in this? And I would often say, there's so many things that singing can enhance in a child's life. And one of them being this sense of confidence in, like, presenting oneself. So even like children raising their hands in a classroom and answering a question, which, there are even statistics around how, like, when girls start to transition into puberty, that they start to not lift their hands and speak up even when they know the answers. And so, and often children of all genders might start to kind of like shrink in their, posture and things like that. And just having some kind of art training can be so helpful in, just like you're saying, feeling confident speaking up, So I love that you would bring that up. That's great. That's so great. Okay, so then the last one that I wanted to ask you is, how do you think about your artistic voice? And I mean, I know you use it in so many ways, but these days, I know I could ask you tomorrow and it might even be a different answer. But in this moment, how do you think about your artistic voice, and what's your relationship like to that?
I feel like my voice for writing fiction is pretty strong because I've been practicing that for a long time. And so I would say my voice for my nonfiction, and for even like talking to people in my newsletter or writing on social media, I would say it's conversational. It's like a loving older sister who's like, okay, you got this. You guys, come and be in the thriving artist community with me because you got this. You can do it. So I think fun and encouraging. And I'm really I'm really dealing with deep dive into voice in fiction right now, because it's a whole different animal, right? It's like a whole different, and I haven't, it's not that I haven't practiced it as much. It's, I guess, that I feel less confident about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, and I want to make each character's kind of distinctive voice, you know, make them their own thing. So it's really interesting. I still think it's playful, and I think it's imaginative, I guess I would say, because I really do have lots of like imaginative ideas, and like sometimes, and I think you get this too, like sometimes it's like paring it down that, that needs to be done, right? There's
Right.
so many ideas and so many things. You probably have so many pieces that didn't make it into this
Yeah.
book, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah, kind of maybe overly prolific, but it's been fun to learn to kind of play with that too. I think we've talked about this a lot. You know, art is art. Like it can, whatever form it goes into, you know, it's all coming from, you know, yes, our own experiences, but also from the greater, whatever you want to call it, the divine cosmos, whatever,
Right.
you know. And so, and then there's that whole Liz Gilbert idea that an idea is its own thing, and it might come to you, and if you don't use it, it might go to somebody else. And you know, so there's so much prolific stuff out there that kind of bringing that into a place where we can present it in a coherent voice is
Yes.
challenging and fun and
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, you know, I shared with you, I think probably when I was sort of most of the way through writing the book, how just writing this book really actually changed my perspective on composing music. And it's been so fun now because I was kind of, you know, editing can be a little challenging, and then you have to manufacture and all that. And I was like, I want to write music, but I wasn't allowing myself to do that because I just was like, I got to stay focused. I didn't want to get pulled off into another direction. And it's been so fun this year, now that the book has been birthed, to be back into composing music, and like that idea of how there are now I see how so much more, how many musical ideas are available to me. And I feel like writing this book really helped me to kind of open up or maybe release some of the self-censoring that I had, because it's like, I feel like, and now I think there's no way that those ideas weren't there prior to the book, but somehow writing this book allowed me to like open up my hearing and realize, just like you were saying, how Elizabeth Gilbert talks about, there's like all these sonic ideas that are available. And I'm just like, okay, I could latch onto that one. I like that one. Let's go for a ride, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, it is challenging, and it is fun. The challenge is fun to kind of refine and figure out, you know, how you want to present something, for sure. So
I like taking it for a ride. That's great. I can picture like, let's go. Wee!
totally. That's how it feels sometimes. It sometimes feels like I'm selecting, this one is speaking to me more, just like you were saying, like your intuition kind of leads you towards something. And so like when I'm writing music, I feel like I'm trying ideas, and then all of a sudden it's like, I really like this one.
Yeah.
And then it's, you know, kind of hooking on to that, and then like, okay, let's try and do something together, you know? So yeah. So I'm curious, you know, you've read this book so many times, I feel like, or heard excerpts of it. And actually, before I even talk about that, do you want to talk a little bit about the Sacred Path, the group, just like what that program is like? Because I feel like some people might be interested who are watching.
Yeah, sure. So it's a small group. Right now I have 5 people in it, but I cap it off at 10 because I want it to be really intimate. And what we do is we meet each week. It's changed a little bit since you were in it, but we meet each week on Tuesdays. And what we're doing is what I'm supporting people in writing their book. I'm not writing it for them. It's not a ghostwriter kind of thing. I'm supporting them with the 3 main things, one of which is a writing habit. And I even call it a writing ritual because I like to bring in the sacred. You can probably tell from my surroundings here in my office, bring in the sacred container for that writing. The second thing is having an intention, a real intention, not only what your book will do for the world, for that's important, but also what writing it will do for you and as an artist, as a person, as a business owner. A lot of my clients are business owners. You know, what will it do for you, and then what will it do for everyone who reads it? So that's the intention piece. And then the one that really, like, I know we connected a lot around was the flexible outline.
Right.
You know, you talked about, you know, how you didn't really know where it was going, but that's why I don't say just an outline and then you follow it. It's a flexible, living, breathing document where you can capture those ideas, those thoughts. You can rearrange things. You can, you know, like, just have it as a way of not having to keep it all in your head, basically, because there's so many ideas and thoughts and things, and just capture it, and then it's kind of a loose way to guide your journey. And then the other thing that I love about the Sacred Path is that how the writers all support and encourage one another. That's the sacred, you know, sacred thing about all of this, is that everyone supports. Are we back?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can see you.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh,
I know it might be a little bit blurry. Okay. Yeah. Well, so you watched the process of me writing this book, and I was just curious if you had any questions. Maybe, you know, now that you've seen the completed book, and you know, just having been being through that process, I was curious if you had any questions for me about the book itself.
I don't think questions so much as I loved the process that we sort of co-created, because each person's creative process is unique, and we sort of co-created this process with the 3 documents.
Yeah.
So I wondered if we could just sort of have a conversation about that a little bit. We had the flexible outline was one of them, and then you had 2 separate ways of doing, like, the draft. One was like the raw.
Yes.
One was So
Right. Okay. So yeah, and I'm glad you're reminding me, because I'm like, what are the 3 documents? So the flexible outline, I just want to say I love the flexible outline, because one thing that's really nice about that is I'm sure I see a lot of Prawit and Arun. I see all these people who have joined, and like, I know for many of us who create, sometimes you want to put in creative hours, right? You want to compose music, you want to compose some writing, but like, maybe you're not completely into generating a story in that moment. And I loved having the outline, because that was a way that I could tend to my book without necessarily like generating a poem or a monologue. And I still felt like I was getting things done.
Yeah.
So that was really nice. And then I discovered that it was really nice for me to have 2 versions of my working manuscript. One I called my messy doc, where that was the document where I would go in and just kind of brain dump anything that was coming to me. And then I would sort of refine it and put it into my more clean version of my manuscript.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of liberating to have a document that was like just abundant with all kinds of stuff. And it could be the first version that you sort of download an idea. And also, you know, I think regardless of whatever medium you're in, I feel like all of us kind of, the first time we sometimes are trying to compose something, it might be kind of messy. It might have more than what you want. And it's really nice, as we talk about in writing and composing, to not try to edit right when you're kind of bringing in that idea. So that messy document was super helpful for that.
Yeah, and then if you sat down and, like you said, you weren't feeling like coming up with something new, you could go to that little more refined document and kind of play with it and edit it. I feel like that's the biggest writing tip that I have, and it probably goes for songwriting too, is to not try and write and edit at the same time. And the reason for that is because you're writing from your creative right brain, like, you know, inner child self that's free and messy and wild. And your editing comes from your left brain, analytical, kind of talking self, and so, and that they both have their value, but if you put them both in the driver's seat at the same time, like, you're not going anywhere.
Totally. Yes. And so, to like my point about before, like I think there were a lot more stops and starts with my music writing, because I think sometimes both of them, both those parts, both those voices were in the driver's seat. And so it was like, and so now I know, okay, just like let my intuitive voice just kind of go and like run with that as a composer, run with that as a writer, and then start to like bring in my editor, bring in my producer self, and kind of refine things. Yeah. Yeah. That's so awesome. Was there a particular poem or monologue or essay for those folks that are like with us live or who will watch this later that you like that really resonated with you? Yeah.
I marked 3 things, but my very, very top favorite has always been, since you gave, like presented the raw version of it, Fields of Ideas. Because I really strongly resonated with that, that child self that's just free with it. Like, she's not worried about there's so many ideas. Like, yeah, I feel like when we first met at that business coaches retreat, that was where we sort of connected, was, the life of the imagination.
Yeah.
It's like so much fun, and like, yes. So I love that piece. But I want to tell you about the other 2 that I love as well. Loosening My Tongue, the birth. It's like a birth poem, really, and it's amazing, beautiful.
Thank you.
And then along the lines of Fields of Ideas is Roller Skates, which is also a poem that I just you can feel it so, viscerally, like, oh yeah, I'm there.
I love that you would bring that up, because for those of you who are with us live today, I actually read an excerpt of that poem on the first episode of our podcast, because that was actually Nikolai's request. He was like, I want you to read that one. And it's very fun because my daughter just so happens to be really into roller skating herself. And my friend that I was really writing about that poem, who I grew up with, her name's Savannah Lee Hempel. She lives in Berlin, and they recently sent a picture, because my daughter's there in Berlin, of the 2 of them with roller skates. And it was like full circle to have like my childhood friend going roller skating with my daughter. It was like, so that's so fun that you bring that up. Well, thank you so much, Nikki. I wanted to open it up because I know that I don't even know what time it is, but I'm sure we're kind of, oh, there we are. Yeah, 12. I wanted to open up for anybody who's joining us live. If there's anyone who has a question of Nikki, if you have a question about her programs, a question about my book. So we're here, and I'll be looking at the chat.
It was so funny that you talked about the pandemic at the beginning. Right before, like 2018 was when I started the Writing Coach business. So like it was right before the pandemic. I just started to do like in-person retreats and an in-person writing group, and everything kind of came to a halt. And that's what inspired the parallel play dates, which I'm still doing now, the weekly gatherings, because I feel like artists of all types, there's a stereotype, especially with writing, where you're like off by yourself in a quiet room and doing your thing. And yeah, that happens, but it's so valuable to be in groups of people and just inspiring each other and bouncing ideas around. And
totally. That's what I was going to comment on that before, that you were talking about the importance of that, like that's such a strong value for you in the programs that you lead. And it's interesting because I notice for myself, and I don't know if you have this too, like sometimes, you're writing something, it's fun, it's pleasurable, and then maybe you hit a spot where you just don't know where to go, or maybe you start to kind of doubt, is this any good? And, oh, good, we have a question. And then, it's like when I meet with another person, just that connecting with another person and a little bit of encouragement, and I'm like, okay, I want to get back into it. You know, And that's what I feel one of the things that I find is so helpful about having artist community, or, you know, because I just feel like we encourage one another to keep doing it, you know?
Absolutely.
Um, so
Yeah.
I see Black Lion of the Stars has this question: what is important about your voice and authenticity? So maybe that's for both of us. But Nikki,
Yeah.
do you want to answer that first?
Yeah, I feel like what's important, and I'll take your as like everybody's, is that we each see the world through a unique lens, and nobody else is exactly like us. I mean, you and I connected about like the world of the imagination and then the way we process that, but then there are other lots of differences. You know, you're a singer and I'm a, you know, more of just a writer, and then, you know, like you have this whole book is like aimed at like Black girls and women, which I think is so awesome. And you know, so but I'm not that in this lifetime, so you know, like there's so many differences and similarities that each of us is unique, and I think the world needs and deserves to hear from each person
Yeah. Yeah.
their true self,
Yeah.
the authentic. That's the authentic part. Like, what's true to you?
Mm,
You know, what's true to you? Yeah.
mm. Yeah, what's important about your voice and authenticity? Yeah, I think I agree. I feel like when one of the things that I love, I teach people voice and movement, and many people who come to me are wanting to deepen their connection to their voice. They're wanting to better understand their voice. That's part of where I got the subheading, Finding the Power in Your Voice, because I would get so many folks calling me saying, I want to find my voice. I want to find out what my voice can do. I don't know what it can do. And the thing is, like, everybody's singing voice, when it comes to singing, if we look at singing, is so unique and different. And you know, to me, like I always say, I'm a vocal technique geek. I love vocal technique, but that's because when people are singing in a way that's like unstrained and it's really comfortable, their unique story comes through. Because it's just like you don't have to create that, because it's just already inherent in a person's physical being, you know. And it's like, to me, it just, every time a person opens their mouth and like sustains a note, I feel like I have insight into their life story. And that's so valuable, because when you really hear it, you hear the vulnerability in a person, you hear the power in a person, you hear like challenges just in a note. You know, at least that's what I hear when I hear people sing. And that's true for non singers as well, like people who don't identify as professional singers. I'm like, trust me, you know, when you open your mouth, you can hear your story. And so I just think that, just like you're saying, that's so valuable for everybody to get to have a chance to make that kind of a sound that's so true, and also for people to get to hear, you know, an authentic sound. So
You know, that's beautiful. Let me just add too that that's true in writing. Even if you didn't, like, I have so many people who say, "Well, I didn't finish college, or I didn't take a writing course, or I didn't like I don't." You too have that in you to write something that's so powerful, and sometimes even more. Sometimes those of us who are really highly trained, you know, in writing have to shed those, you know, constraints and to let go. But someone who isn't can just give this most powerful metaphor, and you're just like in tears, going, "Wow," you know.
yes,
But they're like, "Oh, I'm not a writer. I'm not a writer."
so true.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you. I know that we're coming towards time. I just wanted to ask you if you have any fun offerings or things that you wanted to share that you're going to be doing coming, you know, in the upcoming months. Is there anything, and also ways that, you know, folks can be in touch and follow you and know about your offerings?
Yeah. So my website is nikkistarcatshields.com, and it's Nikki. You can see it in the you know, my name on here. And so everything is on there. What I'm really most excited about recently is the retreats. So I have a in-person one here in Maine on the coast in the summer that has a couple spots left. If you're like really like, ooh, I want to come to Maine in July, then, you know, message me, get on it. I've just got a couple spots left. But I also run virtual retreats. And the one in August, that's August 10th and 11th, is all around journaling and harvesting your inner wisdom from your journals, and just like going really deep within where you find those jewels buried. So that one I'm super excited about too. If you go on my website, just look under retreats and you'll see all of them listed there.
Great, great. Yay! Thank you so much. I'm trying to see if I can see this other. I have one more question. How do you think we can get more people singing? I've noticed in my travels around the world that folks sing even if they're not professional. It's so beneficial for our health and communication. Yes, Katie.
Yeah.
You know, I just kind of really like one of my missions is talking about singing and presenting it as an option for people to take a voice class, to take voice lessons, to join a choir or do some group singing, just for the health of it. Like the way that we look at yoga, right? I wish that people would start to look at singing in that same way, because just like you said, it can really benefit your breathing. It can benefit regulating your nervous system. It can give you those feel-good hormones so that you feel connected to other people. So I think talking about it more, and like sharing. Unfortunately, I feel like in the West, we always need like rationalization for that which we already feel to be true. But a recent book that I just saw, bassist and composer Esperanza Spalding just posted, Music and the Mind, where I know, it's a collection of essays by different folks. And so I think like looking at books like that, sometimes people need like rationalization for why they ought to consider taking art seriously, even though, we want to be doing it playfully, but like playfully serious, right? Seriously playful. So, yeah, thank you for asking that. And yeah, I think that we just have to talk about it more and more. Yeah. So thank you so much, Nikki. Thank you all for joining and staying with us live. And again, I'll be back next month with another Lost and Found Behind the Book conversation. So follow me. And you can also join my mailing list if you want to find out about more of these. And have a great day and weekend. All right.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.